Hello everyone, this is my group. We did 500 BC to 500 AD, which is the second half of the ancient era. This is Lee, Caitlin, and Jaffer. And I'm going to hand it off to Lee. Lee is going to talk about roads and how roads evolved from ancient times.
Alright. So, the very first road was in Persia. It was technically like a highway. It was 1,700 miles long. It went from the capital of Sardis to Susa, and it was named the Royal Road after King Darius the Great, and they decided to call it the Royal Road. And we'll be talking about how it impacted, how it's harder, better, faster, and stronger for the empire. Alright, so how does the road make it harder for enemies to cross? So, with it being 1,700 miles long, it also has stations every 15 miles on the road, on the highway, whatever you want to call it. It's guarded by the king's closest leaders, couriers, and his guards. So enemies, with it being every 15 miles on the road, enemies won't be able to cross, there'll be guards everywhere. The main purpose of the road, though, was for better communication throughout the empire. So for couriers to deliver messages, having the road and not muddy terrain made it more efficient communication throughout the empire. And it's faster travel time through the cities as well. Also, with it being stone, horses and stuff won't get stuck in mud or go through those kind of different terrains. The travel time by horse is 7 to 9 days from the capital to the end. By feet for armies and stuff like that, it's 70 to 90 days. So it's a very big time. But they would march, they wouldn't be able to have horses, so that's what they would have to do. So it doesn't necessarily bulk up the messengers and the horses, but with the stations at every 15 miles, there's more messengers ready to deliver messages. So the king has an urgent message that needs to go to this place. The messenger will go to this station, and then it'll go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So the horses and the messengers won't get as tired. Besides, how it makes them stronger. So how it impacts the time. So during that time, if you had road, if you had territory, you ruled the empires and stuff like that. So the more road, the more territory you have, the stronger your empire will be. So that the very first highway was just the stepping stone and foundation of the roads that they continue to build and goes through time. So that's the Royal Road. Jaffer is up next, and he'll talk about his technology.
Thank you. You're not ready for this. So, back in 200 BC, before anyone used architecture, everything was made out of stone. It cost too much time, and time cost money. It was too reminiscent of Greek architecture, which is getting old around this time. And don't get me wrong, the Greeks left behind a legacy, but and an impact. They left art, philosophy, even the word music and politics. But I think it's about time we leave our own legacy for future civilization. The first three invented by Greeks, and the later two invented later on by Romans. With the invention of this new product, it freed up a lot more architecture and Roman architecture in different shapes, a lot more complicated shapes. You can create much more stronger, long-lasting, and grand and luxurious architecture So the first two were used by the Greeks. A lot more simple design with stone carved into it. This one has a style similar to scrolls in a library, but later on with Roman concrete you can make much more complicated designs. This is reminiscent of shrubbery. Later on they used it to support structures, but also build long, strong multi-story apartments, courthouses, public baths, and lighthouse and warehouses. The concrete was made out of a complex blend of stone, mortar, and volcanic minerals, but there was also very many secret ingredients that weren't later discovered, but they looked at the molecule of it. It's a tri-dimensional crystallized molecule called tobermorite. It's a very fascinating material because it lasted throughout later on 2,000 years, but the main impact that it gave was a sort of a revolution of different styles. It later inspired many renaissances throughout the globe, and I will pass it off to Caitlin.
Hello. So if there are any doctors out there, welcome. So today I'm going to be introducing the new and improved method tools. But first, let's discuss health before this time. So before, we thought it was the wrath of the gods that made us sick, but we were wrong. So once you understand that disease is science, we can now work on preventing and finding more effective cures and tools so we can stay healthy. So do you want your patients to die of gangrene? No! I have the products for you. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a scalpel. It's used to make a variety of incisions, and one specific scalpel that we created is the belly scalpel, and it's used for very delicate work. So we are committed to providing you with the best bronze and steel to create these world-renowned scalpels. So the next item that I have to show is the cautery. So the cautery can be used for several purposes, including removing tumors and stopping bleeding by melting the blood vessels closed. So it's basically a scissor that's heated on the end. So this will help your patients from bleeding out by being able to melt the blood vessels. And the next item we have is the bone drill. It can be used to remove diseased bone tissue from the skull and other foreign objects. So right now we have many soldiers off fighting for us, and you need a way to get those weapons from the bone so they can live, and that is the solution. And here's some other examples. So next up, I'm going to be selling a travel-sized case of 4 humors. Now what are the 4 humors, you ask? Well, we are made up of 4 substances: black bile, yellow bile, blood, and phlegm. And then here's a little graph to show. So if you're feeling unenthusiastic or antisocial, you might need a little more blood. And if you're feeling slightly depressed, you might need to get rid of some black bile. So once you're balanced again, then you're going to be happy. So some of these practices may seem strange, but do you want you and your patients to live? Or do you want to beat this poor guy? And now I'm going to be passing it off to Kai.
Alright, so during this time we have philosophers. We made a major jump in philosophy. Philosophy is defined as a lover of wisdom. This is Socrates. He's known as the father of philosophy because he was like the very first philosopher around 500 BC in Greece, and he came up with this Socratic method. And basically, it was a way where we ask questions and answer questions that involve critical thinking, and it's used today. It can be used in like law rooms. It can be used in schools. It can be used in science. it's basically like a hypothesis and then a prediction, predicted outcome. So you create a bunch of hypotheses and you have a bunch of different predicted outcomes that trigger like critical thinking. And this is a pupil of Socrates, Plato. Plato, he was very into government, and he believed that the government wasn't efficient, or it wasn't as good as it could have been, because he believed that the government should be based off of, even though the government is a democracy, it should be based off of the fulfillment of the individual person rather than money and stuff. So he wrote a book, a really famous book called The Republic, and it's a lot of ideals and stuff based on how government should work and how society should be ran. And this is another pupil of Plato's, Aristotle. He's a philosopher. He actually he tutored Alexander the Great, who later conquered most of the Western world. And Aristotle, he was he questioned why things were the way they were. And after questioning things, he decided to write books on things from biology, psychology, astronomy, and physics. He was like also known as like the father of science. He was one of the first people to really study science and why things were the way they were and move away from the gods more. And this is another philosopher, Hippocrates. He's super into medicine, and he created a lot of things, a lot of like the tools that Caitlin said. And so the impacts of these philosophers is they get us thinking, asking questions why things are the way they are, and this shifted us away from the gods. We now had something else to rely on rather than just the gods made it that way. Instead of myths and legends, we actually had scientific evidence and proof. And so we also have good ideas on government and how the perfect government can be run so that the average individual is living a happy, fulfilling life. And we also have advances in medicine with our new technology. And any questions?